My dear friends, open your hearts and listen closely, for the world we live in is not just flesh and blood, it is a battlefield of the soul. There are forces at work unseen by the eye, but deeply felt in the spirit. Some people walk among us, but they are not guided by love, kindness, or truth. Instead, they are driven by something far darker, something that poisons their hearts, clouds their judgment, and turns them away from all that is good. You have seen them. You have felt their presence. The ones who bring pain instead of peace, who spread lies instead of love, who destroy rather than build. They are consumed by something greater than just bad intentions. They are under the grip of demons that whisper in their ears, controlling their actions, deceiving their hearts. And if we do not recognize these forces, if we do not call them out for what they are, we too may fall into their snare. There are 8 demons that rule the hearts of bad people, 8 chains that bind them, 8 forces that drive them deeper into darkness. And today we will expose them one by one. Pride is a silent destroyer. It does not announce itself with a loud voice or come crashing into a person's life like a storm. No, pride is far more dangerous because it seeps in quietly, unnoticed, like a poison that slowly spreads through the soul. It whispers in the ears of men and women, telling them they are greater than they truly are, that they are above correction, above wisdom, above even God himself. It is the root of many sins, for when a person is consumed by pride, they shut their hearts to truth, to humility, to love. Pride was the first sin in history. Before there was theft, before there was murder, before there was any other evil, there was pride. It was pride that turned Lucifer, once a glorious angel, into the enemy of God. He was not content with his place in heaven. He wanted to rise above God himself. And that same pride still works in the hearts of men today, convincing them that they do not need guidance, that they do not need to humble themselves, that they are the rulers of their own destiny. Pride blinds people to their own faults, making them believe they are always right, that their way is the only way, that they deserve more than others. A proud person does not listen. You can show them the truth, you can plead with them, you can lay out the facts in front of them, but they will refuse to see. Why? Because pride has hardened their heart. They are too concerned with protecting their own image, their own reputation, their own sense of superiority. Even when they are wrong, even when the whole world can see their mistake, they will not admit it. They would rather suffer, rather fall, rather lose everything than humble themselves and confess that they were wrong. That is the power of pride. Pride destroys relationships. A proud husband will never apologize to his wife, no matter how deeply he has hurt her. A proud wife will never admit her mistakes to her husband. A proud friend will walk away from years of friendship rather than say, I was wrong. Pride keeps people in conflict, keeps families broken, keeps nations at war. It turns people against one another because a proud heart would rather fight than submit. A proud person always has to win, always has to be on top, always has to have the last word. They see admitting fault as weakness, but in reality, it is their pride that is making them weak. Pride blinds people to their need for help. Have you ever seen someone sinking in their problems, drowning in their own mistakes, but they refuse to accept help? They will say, I can handle it. I don't need anyone. I know what I'm doing. And yet their life is falling apart. They are struggling, but they refuse to reach out. That is pride. It convinces them that accepting help is a sign of failure. But in reality, pride is what is keeping them trapped. They could be free, they could be healed, they could be restored, but their pride won't let them take the step they need to take. Pride makes people think they are better than others. It creates an attitude of arrogance, of looking down on those who have less, of mocking those who are struggling. A proud person walks into a room and immediately begins measuring themselves against everyone else. I am smarter than them, I am richer than them, I am more successful than them. They look at others not with love, not with kindness, but with competition, always needing to prove their superiority. They cannot celebrate the success of others because their pride tells them that someone else's victory means their own defeat. Pride also keeps people from experiencing true peace. A proud person is constantly chasing after more recognition, more praise, more validation. They are never satisfied because pride convinces them that they always need to prove themselves. Even when they have everything they once desired, they still feel empty because pride is never content. It is a fire that burns within, demanding more and more, but never bringing satisfaction. Pride distances people from God. The proud man says, I don't need God, I can do it on my own. He refuses to bow, refuses to surrender, refuses to acknowledge that he is not in control. But the reality is, none of us are in control. We are all fragile, all vulnerable, all dependent on something greater than ourselves. And yet pride makes people believe they are untouchable, that they can live without God, that they can create their own destiny. But history has proven time and time again that pride leads to downfall. The moment a person begins to think they are invincible, they are already on the path to destruction. The Bible says, "Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." How many great men and women have we seen rise to power, only to lose everything because of their pride? They believed they were untouchable, that they were above the law, above morality, above consequence. But pride always leads to a fall. It may take time, it may not happen immediately, but eventually pride will bring destruction. And the sad thing is, pride is often the last sin a person sees in themselves. A person can recognize their anger, their jealousy, their greed, but pride hides itself. It disguises itself as confidence, as strength, as self-respect. A proud person does not even realize they are proud because their pride will not let them see it. They will say, "I am just standing up for myself. I am just being strong. I am just refusing to be weak." But in reality, their pride is controlling them, leading them further and further away from what is good. Pride is not something to take lightly. It is not just a small flaw or a personality trait. It is a destroyer. It destroys character, destroys relationships, destroys lives. And unless a person recognizes it, unless they humble themselves and turn away from it, it will continue to rule over them. The only cure for pride is humility. And humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. It is recognizing that you are not above others, that you are not above correction, that you are not above God. True strength is not found in pride, but in humility. A strong person is not the one who never admits they are wrong, but the one who has the courage to say, "I was wrong." A wise person is not the one who always insists they know best, but the one who is willing to learn from others. A great leader is not the one who demands to be served, but the one who serves others with a humble heart. So, my friend, ask yourself today, is pride ruling your heart? Is it keeping you from peace? Is it destroying your relationships? Is it blinding you to the truth? If so, do not wait for pride to bring you down. Humble yourself now. Recognize that you are not perfect, that you do not have all the answers, that you need wisdom, guidance, and grace. Because only when you let go of pride will you find the freedom, the peace, and the joy that your heart truly longs for. Deception is one of the most dangerous forces in the world. It is not always loud or obvious. It often works in silence, creeping into hearts and minds like a shadow in the night. Those who live by deception do not just lie with their words, they lie with their actions, their expressions, their very way of life. A deceiver does not simply tell lies, they become a lie. They shape their entire existence around falsehoods, manipulating the truth to suit their desires, twisting reality to serve their own purpose. The power of deception is that it makes evil appear good and good appear evil. A deceiver can convince people that darkness is light, that wrong is right, that harm is help. They weave their lies so carefully, so skillfully, that even the wise can sometimes be fooled. But at the core of all deception is selfishness. A deceiver does not care about the truth. They care only about themselves. They will say whatever they need to say, do whatever they need to do, as long as it benefits them. And the most terrifying thing about deception is that those who practice it often believe their own lies. They become so consumed by the web of falsehoods they have created that they can no longer tell the difference between truth and deception. A deceiver is never at peace. Though they may seem confident, though they may act like they are in control, deep down they are always running from the truth, running from exposure, running from the consequences of their own actions. They live in constant fear that one day the truth will come out, and it always does. No lie can last forever. No deception can remain hidden indefinitely. Eventually, the light will shine, and everything they have built on lies will come crashing down. But deception does not only harm the deceiver, it destroys everyone around them. How many families have been broken because of lies? How many friendships have been shattered because of dishonesty? How many lives have been ruined because someone chose deception over truth? A deceiver does not think about the pain they cause. They only think about what they can gain. They manipulate others, using charm and persuasion to get what they want, and when they are finished, they discard people as if they never mattered. A deceiver wears many masks. They pretend to be kind, but their kindness is empty. They pretend to be loyal, but their loyalty is a performance. They pretend to care, but their concern is a weapon they use to control others. They know exactly what to say, exactly how to act to make people trust them. And once they have gained that trust, they use it to their advantage. They take what they want, and when they are done, they move on to their next victim. One of the greatest dangers of deception is that it spreads. When one person lies, it encourages others to do the same. When one person manipulates, it teaches others that manipulation is a path to power. A deceiver creates more deceivers until the truth becomes rare and trust becomes impossible. In a world where deception rules, no one is safe and no relationship can survive. But deception is not just about words, it is about actions. A deceiver does not have to say a single lie to be dishonest. They can deceive through silence, through omission, through carefully choosing what to reveal and what to hide. They can deceive through false promises, pretending to be something they are not, leading others to believe in an illusion. A deceiver understands that sometimes the most powerful lie is not a spoken word, but an unspoken truth. Deception is a tool of the wicked, but it is also a trap. A person who lives by lies will eventually be consumed by them. The more they deceive, the more tangled their life becomes, until they can no longer keep track of what is real and what is false. They must constantly create new lies to cover the old ones, constantly adjust their stories to maintain the illusion. They become prisoners of their own deceit, trapped in a world of their own making, unable to escape. A deceiver may appear successful for a time. They may rise to positions of power, they may gain wealth, they may seem untouchable. But deception is like a house built on sand. It cannot stand forever. Sooner or later, the storm will come. The truth will be revealed, and when that happens, everything they have built on lies will collapse. There is a deep loneliness in deception. A deceiver may surround themselves with people, but they are always alone. They cannot truly connect with others because every relationship they have is built on falsehood. They cannot experience real love because love requires trust, and a deceiver cannot be trusted. They may fool the world, but they can never escape the emptiness inside them. They may gain the world, but they will lose their soul. The only cure for deception is truth, but truth is something a deceiver fears. They avoid it, they run from it. They do everything they can to silence it, because the moment they face the truth, they must face themselves. They must confront the reality of what they have become. And for many, that is too painful to bear. They would rather continue living in lies than admit the damage they have done. But there is hope, even for the deceiver. No one is beyond redemption. No one is so lost in lies that they cannot be found. But it requires a choice to step into the light, to abandon falsehood, to embrace honesty, no matter the cost. It is not an easy path. It requires humility. It requires courage. It requires the willingness to face the consequences of one's actions. But in the end, it is the only path that leads to freedom. So, my friend, ask yourself today, have you been deceived? Have you placed your trust in someone whose words do not match their actions? Have you allowed deception to take root in your own heart? If so, do not let it continue. Seek the truth. Hold on to what is real. Because in a world full of lies, only the truth can set you free. Hatred is a fire that consumes everything in its path. It does not start as a raging inferno, but as a small spark, a single thought, a quiet resentment, a minor offense that is allowed to grow. It feeds on bitterness, on past wounds, on the unwillingness to forgive. The more it is entertained, the stronger it becomes, until it takes over the heart, the mind, and the soul. Hatred changes a person from the inside out, turning them into someone they never intended to be. It blinds them to reason, numbs them to love, and hardens them to truth. A person filled with hatred does not see the world as it truly is. Their vision is clouded, distorted by their anger and resentment. They no longer see people as individuals, each with their own struggles, pain, and humanity. Instead, they see enemies, threats, and obstacles to be destroyed. Hatred convinces a person that they are justified in their anger, that their actions, no matter how cruel, are righteous. It gives them a false sense of purpose, a twisted mission that leads only to destruction. Hatred never stays contained. It spreads like a disease, infecting everything around it. A person who harbors hatred in their heart may believe they can control it, that they can keep it directed at one person, one group, one idea. But hatred does not work that way. It is never satisfied with a single target. It grows, reaching into every area of life. It poisons relationships, turning love into resentment. It destroys families, breaking apart bonds that should be unbreakable. It creates division in communities, setting people against one another, and in the end, it consumes the person who carries it, leaving behind nothing but emptiness and regret. Hatred distorts judgment. It convinces people to act in ways they never would under normal circumstances. It drives them to say things they never intended, to do things they never thought themselves capable of. It strips away kindness, patience, and understanding, replacing them with cruelty, impatience, and intolerance. A person ruled by hatred will go to great lengths to justify their actions, to convince themselves and others that they are right, that their anger is noble, that their bitterness is deserved. But hatred is never noble. It never leads to anything good. One of the greatest dangers of hatred is that it masquerades as strength. It makes people believe they are powerful, that they are standing up for themselves, that they are refusing to be weak. But in reality, hatred is weakness. It is a prison, trapping people in a cycle of anger and revenge. It controls their thoughts, dictates their actions, and prevents them from experiencing true freedom. Real strength is not found in hatred. It is found in the ability to forgive, to move forward, to refuse to let past wounds define the future. Hatred is also a tool of deception. It convinces people that they are the victims, that their anger is justified, that they have every right to hold on to their resentment. It feeds them lies, telling them that letting go is the same as losing, that forgiveness is a sign of weakness. But the truth is, hatred only punishes the one who carries it. It does nothing to the person or people it is directed toward. It does not bring justice. It does not bring healing. It does not bring peace. It only creates more pain, more destruction, more suffering. Hatred is often passed down from generation to generation. A child who grows up surrounded by bitterness and resentment learns to see the world through the same lens. They inherit the anger of their parents, their community, their culture. They learn to hate before they even understand why. And so the cycle continues, with each new generation carrying the same burdens, fighting the same battles, suffering the same consequences. But hatred does not have to be passed down. The cycle can be broken. It takes one person, one choice, one moment of courage to say, "It stops with me." Hatred is a heavy burden. It weighs down the soul, drains energy, steals joy. It keeps people trapped in the past, reliving old wounds, holding on to pain that should have been released long ago. It prevents growth, keeps people from experiencing love, from finding true peace. A person who carries hatred may think they are strong, but in reality they are bound by chains they have placed on themselves. The only way to be free is to let go. Hatred is never the answer. No matter how deep the wound, no matter how great the offense, no matter how strong the anger, hatred will never bring true satisfaction. It may feel empowering in the moment. It may seem like the only way to deal with pain, but in the end, it only leads to more suffering. The only true path to freedom is forgiveness, not because the other person deserves it, but because hatred is too great a burden to carry. A person consumed by hatred may believe they are winning, that they are proving their strength, that they are getting justice, but in reality, they are losing time, losing peace, losing themselves. Hatred does not destroy the enemy, it destroys the one who holds on to it. It blinds, it deceives, it corrupts, and in the end, it leaves nothing behind but emptiness. The choice is clear: live with hatred and be consumed by it, or let go and be free. The world is filled with pain, with injustice, with reasons to be angry, but holding on to hatred only ensures that the pain continues. True strength is found in choosing a different path, in refusing to let darkness rule the heart. Let go, move forward, choose freedom over chains, because no one ever won the battle by allowing hatred to rule their life. Greed is a silent force that corrupts the human heart. It does not come suddenly or with a loud warning. It creeps in quietly, disguised as ambition, as the pursuit of success, as the desire for more. It starts with a simple thought: just a little more money, just a little more power, just a little more recognition. But greed is never satisfied. The more it is fed, the hungrier it becomes. It consumes everything in its path, leaving nothing but emptiness behind. A person ruled by greed will never know true contentment, because no matter how much they have, it will never be enough. Greed blinds people to what truly matters. It makes them believe that their worth is determined by their possessions, that their success is measured by wealth, that their importance is defined by status. It convinces them that if they just reach the next level, if they just acquire a little more, then they will finally be happy. But happiness always remains just out of reach, because greed moves the finish line again and again. What was once enough is no longer satisfying. What once seemed like the ultimate goal now feels small. Greed keeps pushing, always demanding more, never allowing rest. A greedy person is never truly free. They are enslaved by their own desires, trapped in a cycle of wanting, taking, and wanting again. They wake up thinking about how to gain more, and they go to bed worrying that they might lose what they already have. Their mind is constantly occupied with strategies, plans, and schemes to increase their wealth, their power, their influence. They may appear successful on the outside, but inside they are restless, anxious, and never at peace. Greed creates an illusion of control, but in reality, it takes control away. Greed destroys relationships. A person consumed by greed sees others not as people, but as opportunities, as obstacles, as tools to be used for their own gain. They manipulate, deceive, and exploit, all in the name of getting ahead. Friendships are sacrificed, families are broken, loyalties are betrayed, all because greed whispers that success is more important than love. But in the end, what good is success if it is achieved at the cost of real connection? What is the point of wealth if it is earned through dishonesty and selfishness. A greedy person may reach the top, but they will find themselves alone when they get there. Greed is deceptive. It does not always look like excess. Sometimes it hides behind justifications. A person may say they are working hard for their family, that they are striving for security, that they are simply being responsible. And while there is nothing wrong with ambition or financial wisdom, greed takes these good things and turns them into an obsession. It makes a person believe that their worth depends on what they have, that their security lies in their possessions, that their happiness is tied to their bank account. But true security is not found in wealth, and real happiness cannot be bought. Greed leads to dishonesty. It convinces people that bending the truth is acceptable if it leads to greater gain. It justifies cheating, lying, and cutting corners. It whispers that integrity is a luxury that only the weak can afford. It tells a person that doing the right thing is foolish if it costs them money, status, or power. And so, step by step, greed pulls a person further and further from their values until they no longer recognize themselves. They become willing to do whatever it takes to get ahead, no matter who they hurt in the process. Greed does not only affect individuals, it infects entire societies. When greed rules, corruption flourishes. Leaders abandon their responsibility for the sake of profit. Businesses prioritize money over people. The rich exploit the poor. And in the end, everyone suffers because a society built on greed cannot stand. History has shown again and again that greed leads to downfall. Empires collapse, economies crumble, and great men and women fall, not because they lacked intelligence or skill, but because they allowed greed to be their master. One of the greatest lies that greed tells is that money equals happiness. It promises that if a person just has enough, they will finally be at peace. But the truth is, no amount of money can fill the emptiness inside a greedy heart. No amount of wealth can bring joy to a person who has sacrificed everything for it. How many people have chased after riches only to find themselves miserable? How many have worked tirelessly for fortune only to realize that they lost their family, their health, their soul in the process? Greed takes and takes, but it never gives what it promises. Greed also steals gratitude. A person ruled by greed does not appreciate what they have because they are always focused on what they lack. They do not see the blessings in their life because they are too busy chasing after more. They do not experience true joy because their minds are always occupied with the next goal, the next achievement, the next possession. Gratitude brings contentment, but greed destroys it. Where there is greed, there is no room for thankfulness, and without thankfulness, there is no true happiness. Greed leads to destruction. A person consumed by greed will eventually find themselves trapped in their own desires. They may succeed for a time. They may gather wealth, power, influence. But in the end, greed always demands more than a person can give. It leads to reckless decisions, to moral compromises, to a life built on unstable ground. And when everything falls apart, when the wealth disappears, when the power fades, when the status is gone, the greedy person is left with nothing. They spent their entire life chasing after things that could never satisfy, only to realize too late that they were running in the wrong direction. But there is a way out. A person does not have to be a slave to greed. They do not have to live in constant hunger for more. They can choose a different path, a path of contentment, of generosity, of true fulfillment. It is not an easy path, because greed does not let go easily. It fights to stay, whispering its lies, making its promises. But the moment a person decides to let go of greed, to stop chasing after things that will never satisfy, they take their first step toward real freedom. The antidote to greed is generosity. The best way to break free from its grip is to give. Not just money, but time, kindness, compassion. When a person chooses to give rather than take, to help rather than hoard, to serve rather than seek their own gain, they begin to see the world differently. They realize that true joy is not found in possessions, but in relationships. That true success is not measured by wealth, but by character. That true fulfillment does not come from having more, but from making a difference. Greed is a powerful enemy, but it does not have to win. The choice is in every person's hands. They can choose to be ruled by their desires, to live their life chasing after things that will never satisfy, or they can choose to let go, to be content, to seek something greater than wealth or power. Because in the end, the measure of a person's life is not what they have gathered, but what they have given. And the greatest treasure of all is a heart that is free. Arrogance is a silent destroyer. It creeps into the heart, disguising itself as confidence, as self-assurance, as strength. But arrogance is not strength. It is a weakness that blinds a person to reality. It builds a false world where they believe they are superior, where they think they know more, deserve more, and are above correction. It makes them deaf to wisdom, blind to their own faults, and incapable of growth. Arrogance is a prison, and those who live in it do not even realize they are trapped. A person consumed by arrogance walks with their head held high, not in dignity, but in pride. They do not listen to others because they believe they already have all the answers. They dismiss advice, reject correction, and scoff at those who try to guide them. They are convinced that their way is the only way, that their thoughts are the only ones that matter. And because they refuse to listen, they never learn, they never grow. They remain stuck in their own illusions, believing they are wise while making foolish decisions. Arrogance isolates. A proud person may attract followers for a time, but true relationships are impossible. People may surround them, but it is often out of fear, out of obligation, or out of selfish ambition. No one wants to be close to someone who looks down on them, who refuses to admit when they are wrong, who sees themselves as greater than others, and so arrogance creates loneliness. The proud person, though they may appear successful, eventually finds themselves alone, because their attitude pushes everyone away. Arrogance blinds people to their own flaws. They do not see their weaknesses because they refuse to acknowledge them. They do not accept responsibility because they always blame others. They do not recognize when they are wrong because they convince themselves they are always right. And because they refuse to see their faults, they never change. They remain stuck in patterns of failure, making the same mistakes over and over again. And when things go wrong, they refuse to take responsibility. They point fingers, they shift blame, they find excuses, but the truth remains. Arrogance is the reason for their downfall. Arrogance is deceptive. It convinces people that they are strong when in reality they are fragile. A humble person is open to correction, willing to learn and capable of growth, but an arrogant person is like a glass statue, hard on the outside, but easily shattered. The moment they are confronted with their flaws, with their failures, with their limitations, they crumble. Because arrogance is a mask, and when that mask is removed, what lies beneath is insecurity, fear, and weakness. Arrogance invites destruction. History is filled with the stories of men and women who rose to great heights, only to fall because of their pride. Kings who refused to listen to wise counsel, leaders who believed they were invincible, powerful figures who thought they could do whatever they wanted without consequences. But arrogance always leads to ruin. It makes people take foolish risks. It blinds them to danger. It leads them to ignore warnings until it is too late. Pride has been the downfall of the mighty, the cause of the greatest failures, the reason behind countless tragedies. Arrogance breeds conflict. A proud person is easily offended because they believe they are above criticism. They cannot handle disagreement because they believe their opinions are superior. They argue not to understand, but to prove they are right. They seek to win, not to learn. And so they create enemies where there could have been friendships. They destroy unity where there could have been peace. They turn simple disagreements into bitter fights, and in the end, they harm themselves more than anyone else. Arrogance makes a person unteachable. There is no wisdom without humility. A person who thinks they know everything closes themselves off from learning. They reject advice from those who have more experience. They refuse to acknowledge that they could be wrong. And because they do not learn, they do not improve. They remain stuck in ignorance, making the same mistakes, repeating the same failures. And all the while, they convince themselves that they are wise, that they are successful, that they are better than others. But true wisdom comes from recognizing how much there is still to learn. Arrogance destroys opportunities. No matter how talented a person is, no matter how intelligent, no matter how skilled, if they are arrogant, they will eventually lose the opportunities before them. People do not want to work with someone who is proud and unyielding. Employers do not want to promote someone who refuses to learn. Leaders do not want to invest in someone who thinks they already have all the answers. Pride shuts doors that could have been opened. It turns allies into opponents. It creates resistance where there could have been support. And in the end, the arrogant person is left wondering why they have been left behind while others move forward. Arrogance is often rooted in fear. A truly confident person has no need to prove themselves, no need to boast, no need to look down on others. But an arrogant person is often trying to hide something. They fear being seen as weak, so they pretend to be strong. They fear being wrong, so they refuse to admit mistakes. They fear being insignificant, so they seek attention, praise, and validation. But true strength comes from humility. True confidence is found in knowing who you are without needing to prove it to anyone else. Arrogance prevents personal growth. A humble person seeks to improve, to become better, to refine their character. But a proud person sees no need for improvement. They believe they have already arrived. They resist change, refuse to acknowledge their shortcomings, and dismiss any need for growth. And because they do not grow, they remain stagnant. They become trapped in their own limited perspective, never realizing how much more they could have become if only they had been willing to change. Arrogance is exhausting. Maintaining the illusion of superiority is a constant battle. The proud person must always defend their image, always fight to prove they are better, always seek to be recognized. They cannot admit weakness, cannot show vulnerability, cannot allow themselves to be seen as anything less than perfect. And this is a burden that becomes heavier with time, because no one is perfect. No one has all the answers, and eventually the weight of arrogance becomes too much to bear. But there is another way. A person does not have to live in the prison of pride. They can choose humility. They can choose to listen instead of always speaking. They can choose to learn instead of always assuming they are right. They can choose to grow instead of remaining stuck. Humility is not weakness, it is strength. It takes far more courage to admit a mistake than to pretend to be perfect. It takes far more wisdom to listen than to argue. It takes far more confidence to be humble than to be arrogant. The proud person believes they are above others, but the humble person understands that true greatness comes from serving others. The proud person believes they have nothing left to learn, but the humble person knows that learning never ends. The proud person seeks to prove their worth, but the humble person knows that their worth is not defined by what others think of them. In the end, arrogance leads to destruction, but humility leads to greatness. The choice is clear. A person can continue down the path of pride, convincing themselves they are strong while setting themselves up for failure. Or they can choose to humble themselves, to open their heart and mind, to seek wisdom instead of validation. Because true success, true influence, true leadership, these do not come from arrogance. They come from the willingness to learn, to listen, to grow. And those who choose humility will always rise higher than those who choose pride. Hatred is a poison that corrupts the soul, darkens the heart, and blinds the mind. It does not just appear suddenly. It begins as a small seed, an offense, a disappointment, a betrayal. It starts as a wound, a feeling of injustice, a sense of being wronged. And instead of letting it go, instead of forgiving, a person chooses to hold on to it. They feed it, nurture it, allow it to grow. Over time, that small seed of resentment turns into full-grown hatred, and it takes control of everything. It consumes thoughts, influences decisions, and changes the way a person sees the world. Hatred is not just an emotion, it is a force that destroys everything in its path. A person filled with hatred does not realize how much it is costing them. Hatred makes people believe they are punishing those who hurt them, but in reality, they are only punishing themselves. They carry the weight of anger and bitterness wherever they go. They replay past offenses in their mind, reliving the pain over and over again. They allow their enemies to live rent-free in their thoughts, stealing their peace, their joy, and their ability to love. Hatred is a prison, and the person who holds on to it is the prisoner. Hatred distorts perception. A person consumed by hatred no longer sees clearly. They judge others unfairly, assuming the worst in people. They become quick to anger, quick to accuse, quick to react. They begin to see the world through a lens of bitterness, interpreting everything as a personal attack. They build walls around their heart, refusing to trust, refusing to forgive, refusing to let go. But in doing so, they only isolate themselves. Hatred does not protect, it destroys. It pushes away those who care. It poisons relationships, and it leaves a person standing alone, filled with nothing but anger and regret. Hatred does not just stay inside, it spreads. It affects the way a person speaks, the way they act, the way they treat others. It creates division, sparks conflict, and fuels violence. Families are torn apart because of hatred. Friendships are destroyed. Communities are broken. Wars are started. Hatred is one of the most destructive forces in the world, and yet it is often ignored, excused, or even justified. People convince themselves that their hatred is righteous, that their anger is necessary, that they have every right to feel the way they do. But hatred, no matter how justified it seems, always leads to destruction. Hatred breeds revenge. A person who allows hatred to take root in their heart will eventually seek to hurt those who hurt them. They will look for ways to get even, to make others suffer as they have suffered. But revenge never brings peace. It only continues the cycle of pain. One act of hatred leads to another, then another, and another, until no one remembers where it all started. Families feud for generations, nations remain at war, people live their entire lives consumed by grudges that should have been let go long ago. Hatred is exhausting. It drains energy, consumes thoughts, and leaves a person constantly on edge. A heart filled with hatred cannot experience true happiness. Even in moments of success, there is still a shadow of bitterness. Even in times of joy, there is still a lingering anger. Hatred robs a person of the ability to fully enjoy life because they are always looking for the next fight, the next offense, the next reason to be angry. Hatred becomes an addiction, one that keeps demanding more until there is nothing left but rage and emptiness. Hatred makes people justify the worst behaviors. A person driven by hatred will say and do things they never thought they were capable of. They will spread lies, manipulate situations, and even harm others, all in the name of their anger. Hatred convinces people that their actions are acceptable, that cruelty is justified, that they are only doing what is fair. But in the end, hatred does not make a person strong, it makes them weak. It turns them into the very thing they once despised. Hatred blocks healing. No matter how deep the wound, no matter how great the betrayal, healing is always possible. But hatred prevents that healing. A person who clings to their anger cannot move forward. They remain stuck in the past, trapped in a cycle of pain. They replay the hurt over and over again, refusing to let go, refusing to forgive, refusing to release themselves from the burden of their own emotions. But the truth is, healing does not come through holding on to hatred. It comes through choosing to let it go. Forgiveness is not about excusing what was done. It is not about pretending that the pain was not real. It is not about saying that what happened was acceptable. Forgiveness is about choosing to free oneself from the weight of hatred. It is about saying, I will not let this control me any longer. It is about taking back peace, taking back joy, taking back life. Forgiveness is not for the other person. It is for the one who forgives. Because the moment hatred is released, freedom begins. Hatred is a thief. It steals time. It steals energy. It steals love. It takes away laughter. It takes away relationships. It takes away hope. A person who holds onto hatred believes they are in control. But in reality, hatred is controlling them. It dictates their actions, directs their words, and shapes their destiny. But there is a way out. No one has to be a slave to hatred. No one has to live in anger and bitterness. The moment a person decides to let go, to forgive, to move forward, is the moment they take back their life. Hatred has never made a person truly happy. It has never brought true satisfaction. It has never led to real peace. The world is filled with people who have spent their lives chasing revenge, holding on to anger, allowing hatred to define them. But at the end of their lives, what do they have? Nothing but regret. Nothing but wasted time. Nothing but the realization that hatred was never worth it. But there is another way. There is a way to live without the burden of anger, without the weight of bitterness, without the poison of hatred. It is the way of love, of peace, of forgiveness. It is not the easy path. It takes strength to let go. It takes courage to forgive. It takes wisdom to move forward. But those who choose this path will find what hatred could never give them: true freedom. A person must ask themselves, will they allow hatred to control them? Will they let anger dictate their actions, their thoughts, their future? Or will they choose to rise above it? The choice is in their hands. They can remain trapped in bitterness, or they can break free. Because the truth is, hatred is a chain, but love is the key. And the moment they choose to unlock that chain is the moment they step into the life they were meant to live. Deception is a dangerous tool. It is not just the act of lying. It is the deliberate twisting of truth, the manipulation of reality, the creation of illusions that serve a selfish purpose. Those who engage in deception believe they are gaining power, influence, or advantage over others. But in the end, deception is a double-edged sword. It does not just harm those who are deceived, it also destroys the one who deceives. A deceptive person lives in a world of falsehoods. They construct lies to control situations, to get what they want, to hide their true intentions. But lies are never still. One lie requires another, and then another, until the weight of deception becomes too heavy to bear. They have to remember what was said, to whom and when. They must constantly guard their words, ensuring their story remains consistent. But the truth has a way of revealing itself. No matter how carefully crafted a deception is, eventually it begins to crack. And when it does, the consequences are often far greater than the deceiver ever anticipated. Deception erodes trust. Trust is one of the most valuable things in life. It is the foundation of relationships, the glue that holds families together, the key to strong friendships, the pillar of any successful team or organization. But once trust is broken, it is almost impossible to fully restore. A deceptive person may think they can repair the damage once they are caught, but the stain of dishonesty lingers. People may forgive, but they rarely forget. And the next time that person speaks, their words will be questioned, their promises doubted, their motives suspected. A life built on deception is unstable. Imagine building a house on a foundation of sand. No matter how beautiful the structure appears on the outside, it is only a matter of time before it collapses. The same is true for a life built on lies. A deceiver may gain temporary success, temporary wealth, temporary admiration, but it is all fragile. Because when the truth comes out, and it always does, everything built on deception falls apart. Reputations are destroyed, careers are ruined, families are shattered, and the deceiver is left with nothing but the wreckage of their own making. Deception does not just harm others, it harms the deceiver as well. A person who constantly lies, who manipulates, who twists the truth for their own gain, begins to lose themselves. They start to believe their own lies. They become disconnected from reality, unable to distinguish between what is true and what is false. They lose their integrity, their credibility, their sense of self. The longer they continue down the path of deception, the harder it becomes to turn back. And before they know it, they are trapped in a web of their own making, unable to escape. Deception creates fear. A person who lives by deception is always looking over their shoulder, always wondering when the truth will catch up to them. They fear exposure, they fear consequences, they fear losing everything they have built on lies. They live in constant anxiety, constantly trying to cover their tracks, constantly calculating their next move. But no matter how careful they are, no matter how well they think they have concealed the truth, there is always a moment when the lie unravels. And when it does, it brings devastation. Deception spreads. A person who lies and manipulates does not just affect themselves, they influence those around them. Children who grow up in an environment of deceit learn to lie as well. Employees who see their leaders engage in dishonesty begin to follow the same pattern. Societies that tolerate deception become corrupt, filled with people who prioritize self-interest over integrity. The consequences of deception go far beyond one individual. It creates a culture where truth is undervalued, where honesty is rare, where people no longer trust each other. And when trust is gone, chaos follows. Deception is selfish. At its core, deception is about putting one's own desires above everything else. A deceiver does not care who they hurt, who they betray, who they destroy, as long as they get what they want. They manipulate emotions, they play with people's trust, they twist facts to serve their agenda. And while they may believe they are winning, in reality they are losing everything that truly matters, because a life built on selfishness is an empty life. No amount of money, power, or success can replace genuine relationships, true respect, or a clear conscience. Deception requires constant maintenance. A lie told today must be supported by another lie tomorrow. A manipulative act today must be followed by another to maintain control. A person who lives by deception must always be working, always be scheming, always be ensuring their false reality does not collapse. This is an exhausting way to live, and sooner or later, the weight of maintaining the illusion becomes too great. The deceiver becomes overwhelmed, trapped in their own game, unable to keep up with the lies they have told. But there is another way. A person does not have to live in deception. They do not have to be trapped in a cycle of lies and manipulation. They can choose truth. They can choose honesty. They can choose to live in a way that brings peace, not fear, that builds trust, not suspicion, that creates stability, not chaos. Truth requires courage. It requires integrity. It requires a willingness to admit mistakes, to take responsibility, to stand firm even when honesty is difficult. But the reward of truth is a life free from fear, free from anxiety, free from the burden of deception. A person must ask themselves, will they continue down the path of lies, risking everything for temporary gain, or will they choose to live with integrity, knowing that truth will always prevail? Because in the end, deception always leads to downfall, but truth leads to freedom. Pride is one of the most dangerous qualities a person can possess. It is not confidence, nor is it self-respect. It is an inflated sense of superiority, an arrogance that blinds a person to their own faults and weaknesses. Pride is deceptive. It convinces a person that they are always right, that they are better than others, that they do not need correction or guidance. It is a barrier that separates people from wisdom, from growth, from meaningful relationships. It is the root of destruction, the downfall of even the mightiest individuals, and the silent force that leads many into ruin. Pride makes a person unteachable. A proud person believes they already know everything. They reject advice, they resist correction, they dismiss the wisdom of others. They see themselves as above learning, above change, above improvement. But no one, no matter how intelligent or experienced, is beyond learning. Life is a constant journey of growth, and those who refuse to learn will eventually be left behind. Pride blinds a person to their own ignorance, making them believe they have nothing left to gain, nothing left to understand. And in doing so, they miss out on opportunities, on wisdom, on the chance to become better. Pride isolates. A person filled with pride sees themselves as above others. They look down on those they believe are weaker, less intelligent, less successful. They refuse to admit their own flaws, their own mistakes, their own failures. But relationships are built on humility, on vulnerability, on the ability to admit wrongs and seek reconciliation. A proud person struggles with these things. They do not apologize easily. They do not acknowledge their shortcomings. They do not see the value in others. Over time, this pushes people away. Friends grow distant. Family members stop reaching out. Opportunities disappear. Pride creates loneliness because it convinces a person that they do not need others until they find themselves standing alone. Pride destroys relationships. It leads to arguments, to stubbornness, to an unwillingness to compromise. In marriages, pride prevents spouses from admitting when they are wrong, from listening to each other, from putting their partner's needs above their own. In friendships, pride creates competition, jealousy, and resentment. In the workplace, pride creates tension, conflict, and a toxic environment. A proud person struggles to work as a team, to respect others' opinions, to acknowledge when someone else has a better idea. Pride turns every situation into a battle for superiority, and in doing so, it drives people apart. Pride leads to downfall. History is filled with stories of leaders, kings, and powerful individuals who were destroyed by their own arrogance. They believed they were invincible, that they could not be wrong, that they did not need advice or correction. And in the end, their pride led them to make decisions that ruined them. Pride makes people overestimate their abilities, underestimate risks, and ignore warnings. It makes them believe they are above the rules, above consequences, above reality. But the higher a person lifts themselves up in pride, the harder they fall when the truth finally catches up with them. Pride makes a person resistant to change. Growth requires humility. The ability to admit when something is not working, when a new approach is needed, when a change is necessary. But a proud person refuses to acknowledge these things. They cling to their ways, their ideas, their methods, even when they are clearly failing. They refuse to admit mistakes, even when those mistakes are obvious. They continue down the wrong path, not because they believe it is right, but because they refuse to admit they were ever wrong. This resistance to change leads to stagnation, to failure, to missed opportunities. Pride creates an illusion of self-sufficiency. A proud person believes they do not need help, that they can handle everything on their own, that relying on others is a sign of weakness. But no one is truly self-sufficient. Everyone needs guidance, support, encouragement. The most successful people in the world did not get there alone. They had mentors, teachers, advisors, people who helped them along the way. But pride blinds a person to this reality. It makes them reject help, refuse support, and struggle unnecessarily. Instead of seeing teamwork and collaboration as strengths, they see them as threats to their independence. And in doing so, they limit their own potential. Pride breeds resentment. A proud person struggles to celebrate the success of others. Instead of feeling joy when someone else achieves something great, they feel threatened. They compare, they compete, they belittle. They cannot stand the idea of someone else being better, smarter, more accomplished. This creates bitterness, envy, and a never-ending need to prove themselves. But comparison is a losing game. There will always be someone more successful, more talented, more admired. A person ruled by pride will never be satisfied because their sense of worth is tied to being the best, and that is an impossible standard to maintain. Pride blinds a person to their own faults. It is easy to see the mistakes of others, to criticize, to judge. But a proud person struggles to look inward. They justify their actions, they make excuses, they refuse to acknowledge their own wrongdoing, they point fingers, blame circumstances, find fault in everyone but themselves. But real growth comes from self-awareness, from the ability to recognize one's own weaknesses and work to overcome them. A proud person resists this. They remain stuck, unable to move forward because they refuse to face the truth about themselves. Pride keeps a person from seeking forgiveness. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone falls short. Everyone at some point will need to apologize, to seek reconciliation, to make things right. But a proud person struggles with this. Apologizing feels like admitting weakness, like surrendering, like losing. They would rather hold on to their pride than repair relationships. They would rather justify their actions than seek forgiveness. But in doing so, they miss out on peace, on healing, on restored connections. Pride is a heavy burden to carry, and yet, so many choose to bear it rather than lay it down. Pride is a silent destroyer. It does not always show itself in arrogance or loud boasting. Sometimes, it appears as quiet stubbornness, as an unwillingness to listen, as a refusal to admit fault. It hides behind excuses, behind justifications, behind the illusion of strength. But in the end, it always leads to the same place: loneliness, failure, regret. But pride does not have to win. A person can choose humility. They can choose to listen, to learn, to grow. They can choose to acknowledge their mistakes, to seek forgiveness, to open their hearts to the wisdom of others. Humility is not weakness, it is strength. It is the ability to stand firm in truth while remaining open to correction. It is the ability to succeed without needing to be superior. It is the ability to lead without looking down on those who follow. A person must ask themselves, will they allow pride to control them? Will they let arrogance blind them, isolate them, destroy them? Or will they choose the path of humility, the path of growth, the path of true greatness? Because in the end, pride always falls. but those who choose humility will always rise. Pride is a silent destroyer that blinds, isolates, and leads to downfall. It creates an illusion of superiority while weakening relationships, preventing growth, and fostering resentment. True strength lies in humility, the courage to listen, learn, admit mistakes, and seek wisdom. Those who cling to pride will eventually fall, but those who choose humility will rise, finding peace, wisdom, and lasting success